Yeah, this is Eric Reeds. It's been a while since my last video on RS to PK. There hasn't been um, any tournaments lately, and I've mostly been focusing on testing for Double Rainbow. I know it's a few months away, but I've been working on finding a deck that I really like, and so that's kind of eaten up a lot of my time as far as RS to PK goes. And I do still want to make videos and make blog posts on some things. But I figured I would do a kind of more fun video for today where I do a tier list for the Pokemon Gold Star in terms of viability in the format. Now, when I say viability, the stars are kind of in a weird place where they're not super useful for the most part, but some of them do see use and some of them do have potential, I think. So I did this ranking in the TCG1 Discord, but I figured I'd kind of make a video just to talk about my thoughts some more. It won't be super in depth, I hope. So S tier is going to be cards that are good in multiple decks, um, and like multiple good decks at the very least. A tier is going to be cards that are good in at least one good deck. Like they're when I say good, I mean like good decks are going to play this card. Like at least one deck is going to play these cards. Um, uh, or there's a lot of like kind of shoddier decks that will play the cards too. B tier is going to be cards that um, have a niche that I can see, but that aren't being played too much, really. Um, C tier is going to be cards that I think, or B tier can also be cards that are played in like quote unquote bad decks. That have playability in those decks. C tier is going to be ones that I can see some kind of niche for them in somewhere, and D tier are going to be ones that are just bad, full stop. That like I can't even really fathom why you'd play them. So I'm going to try to work with that. S tier, obviously going to have New Star. This is pretty far and away the best Pokemon Star. It's used in Destiny. It's used in it can be used in Railer. It can be used in Camler. It can be used in Flygon. It can be used in Gardevoir. It can just fit into so many different decks. It's so versatile. Um, it like any deck that's playing multi energies that isn't using its Pokemon Star slot can definitely utilize Mew Star. And so for that reason, I think, and I don't think you can say that about anything else on here. So for that reason, I have Mewstar at the S tier rank. Um, and for A tier, we've got a few. So Latios and Latios Star, I think both should be up here. Latios Star gets played in some LBS builds. Not as frequently these days, but it's definitely got a niche in there in those. Latios Star is played in Sceptile, and I think Sceptile's definitely a top deck. Um, and so these both have uses in those two decks, and I think like some Metagross decks will play some of these, both or one of these sometimes. Like like Metagross DX decks will play them, and Swampert decks can occasionally play them, maybe if you really want. Um, but the fact that they're both in LBS and Sceptile, I think, puts them up here. They both are definitely playable or like essential in like very strong decks. Um, in addition to that, I would say that wait, does this tier list not have Espeon or Umbreon? Okay. All right. Um, that's why you look at the tier list before you start recording the video. Okay, so whoever has this tier list, oh, you can add additional ones. Should I just add them? All right, chat. I'm gonna add them. I'm gonna go ahead and add them real quick here. Um, this is the way that I download cards. I just download them off of TCG1. There might be a more efficient way to do it, but this is the way I've always done it. So this is also the tech demonstration. Wait, you have to open them in a new window and then you can download them. Oh, I think I've already saved Espeon. Whatever. And Umbreon. I think both of these definitely have a case for being in the A tier, and I'll explain why here in a second. Um, okay. Espeon and Umbreon. They used to not let you do this on TCG Maker. Like, it was hard to add your own stuff. I don't know why they would make that difficult, but anyways, Espeon and Umbreon, I think both also deserve to be in the A tier. Um, Espeon is mission critical in Ratlock, and I think Ratlock is a top deck. Umbreon is a little bit weirder of a case. I've played Nidoqueen, Pidgeot, Pop Pidgeot decks that play Umbreon. I've and just in general with the Pop Pidgeot control decks, a lot of them will play Umbreon Star. I know that Hariyama decks play Umbreon Star, and I think the card, just generally speaking, does interesting things. I could see you playing it in Mulok, just as like a way to randomly snipe cards from your opponent's hand, and then you can swoop the Umbreon out, and then you can you can like keep recurring it over and over basically, if you need to. And so Umbreon might be a little lower because it's not really used in a top deck, but I think it's got enough. And I know like Hirayama plays it. Like I know it's got enough fringe uses that I think it's like at least worth considering. And then the other one on here that I would say is Jolteon Star. Um, Jolteon, uh, it is used primarily in Bayonet. It's very good in Bayonet. I think it's one of Bayonet's best cards. It's basically like a plus power that is a double plus power almost. Um, and I think like some other decks will play it on occasion. Like I know like some Cradily builds have played it in the past, so that you can knock things out coming into your turn with lure poison. So I think it's definitely like at this echelon of good. And then B tier, I'm gonna start with Vaporeon and Flareon. Vaporeon has use in Cessation Ratlock, and it also can be used in. I think I've seen Jay Hornung play it in Dragonite EX Delta, and just to tank with it easier. Um, you can kind of think of it as a Tropius Delta that doesn't remove imprison markers, but does remove like 3 damage counters. And there's things it can do, and I think it's like you can you can at least play it in certain decks. Flareon Star is not really super useful, I'd say. I think it has use in some of the Holland Circle lock decks as a way to sort of like do damage to your opponent while you're Holland Circle locking them. Um, and I think that it's used in Flare-Eidos on occasion, especially the full flame variants. I don't think either of those are particularly good decks, which is why I have it down here. But I think like just the fact that it can do something that no other card can do, I think makes it at least somewhat worthwhile. And then I'd say Rayquaza Star is around here. These are not super in order. I guess I can put them in order in within the tier themselves. Um, uh, it's kind of hard to say. Like these are honestly pretty hard to rank after a certain point. Rayquaza Star has fringe use in Meta Knight, and you can play it in ZRE, and there are um like Ray EX Pidgeot pop promo lists that I've messed around with that can play it. There's not like a great home for this card. It's not Delta, so it doesn't get like a lot of the perks of the Delta stuff, and its energy requirement is just a little bit too restrictive, and it has it has two retreats. So if you open with it or get hit, it gets hit with Unknown E, then it can just lose by virtue of existing in your list. But it does do something that virtually no other deck can do. It could just like you could take like six prizes against like Drag Trode out of nowhere. You probably won't, but you could. And so I think it has a place like in this tier list. I don't think like it's good in a top deck or has potential to be good in a top deck. So I don't have it in the A tier, but I think it could be good in some kind of good deck at some point. Um, and then I have Entei Star. This might come as a bit of a surprise, but I think Entei Star actually does have some use. I'll zoom into it because you might not be familiar with it, and you might not be familiar with some more of these cards, but I think all of these people are fairly well acquainted with. Entei Star, I think, has use in Camler. It can just do 70 in a deck that has difficulty putting out strong damage. It's not an EX attacker. It's not an evolution, so you don't have to set it up. It just takes up one deck slot. It doesn't have any real drawbacks. It has pretty solid HP for a basic, and it has only one retreat. And its attack is pretty pricey, but you can power it up with Camerupt pretty easily within Camler. And I think it at least should be experimented with. It's probably not as good as like even Mustar in that deck. You would have to kind of adjust the list a little bit to play Mustar, but I think like just throwing one Entei Star in the deck has potential. I will say that much. Obviously, you don't want to have the downside to it, but I think it's pretty rare that Camler would want to go on the offensive in that situation, anyways. Also worth noting, the legendary beast attacks. The check for prize cards checks comes after, or like the check comes before you consider knockouts that turn. So you can both have six prizes, and if you detonation and KO something, then you don't have to do the downside. You just do 70 damage. So that's another thing is that like when you both are at six prizes, you can just swing for 70 damage. That one shot Stantler, that like two shots Rayquaza. Rayquaza can't special circuit to hit you hard. They can't Sky High Claws to one shot you. So I think Entei Star has some kind of niche in a top deck. So I'd put it around there. Oh, Alakazam Star definitely goes in the A tier. I kind of forgot about this guy. Um, yeah, Alakazam Star definitely is very strong in LBS, and I think it has fringe use in some other decks. Like I think some Metagross DX decks play it, um, and some like just weird decks play it. You can theoretically fit it into like PAL stall decks because Psychic Select is a sniff out. Um, but I think it's not fantastic in those, but the fact that it's played commonly in LBS alongside, or not alongside, but that and Latios, I think both give them a slot in the A tier. Anyways, moving right along, what other cards do I want to have in here? Um, I'd probably put three more cards in this B tier. I'd put Celebi. I'd put um, oh, what was I gonna put here? Celebi, Charizard, and Mudkip. So Celebi has an attack that snipes for the amount of energy on it. I've seen specialized versions of Bomb Caddy that play this Celebi, and I think it's at least interesting enough. And it's time travel Poke Power, which can just like prevent your opponent from taking prize cards off of it, alongside its attack being like niche worthy. I think is it gives it a spot around here. Most of these cards are not like quote unquote good by most meaningful definitions of the word, but I think that they're all have niches that are usable. Um, anyways, yeah, I think Celebi, like the fact that that there is a deck that is quote unquote good that can play it, I think gives it some kind of a niche around here. Charizard Stars in a similar boat. I know Jason's non-Sneasel Dragtrode plays it. I don't think I have been convinced by its inclusion though. I feel like just doing a bajillion damage and then discarding all of your energy is not really worth it. I'm not convinced by this card yet, but Jason seems to think it's good, and I mean it's Dragtrode. Like even if you're just using rotating claws for like 40 to kind of recur some energy here and there, and then you can Brinies it back up. Like you can recur some darkness energy by discarding, whatever, and then you can Brinies it back up, get the energy back. Admin, Dark Nav, get the energy onto the field again. So it is a niche. 90 HP and rotating claws is going to sting with special darkness on it. So I think if nothing else, it's not bad. And then Mudkip, this might be a little bit of a surprise, but um, from what I know, Whirlpool is the like Mudkip Star is the only thing with 70 HP that's a basic that has a Hyper Beam style attack that does not do damage. And that sounds like a really stupid like set of things that it has to meet, but for this reason I think it has some sort of fringe use in Mulock style decks with its attack Whirlpool. um, Also this card and like Pikachu, Torchic, and Trico have use in sudden death because their attacks are just going to deal 70 for 2 with no drawbacks, and they're going to put things to sleep. So, um, not really like useful, but it could come up in Mulock where you get into some sudden death thing, and then you can attack for 70 for 2 energy fairly easily. So, I don't know. Would I play it? Probably not, but I could at least see its capability in that specific deck. Everything else, I don't really see it. And then C tier is going to be cards that I think could I might not be able to justify them immediately, but I could at least see where someone could maybe include them somewhere in something. Um, so first off, these two, Metagross and Registeel. These cards aren't good by any means. Um, However, the cases where I can see them being played is that they both maybe have a use in quad ray style decks where you just play like a few basic metal types and you swoop into them and then you try to tank and take six prizes with them. Metagross can kind of get metals back fairly quickly, and it can like just in general get metal energies back, which I think might have a use in some kind of a deck uh, that plays metal energy. I think Metagross DX would probably be better for that, but whatever. And Registeel, similar thing to like other metal attackers. It doesn't do high damage though, unfortunately, but Final Laser is something. I don't know. This one's kind of stretching it, but yeah. So those two I'd put there. Mewtwo is another one. It's kind of like a less high rolly Latios or Latios, but it does less damage. And doing 100 to an evolved guy at the cost of all of your energy is pretty rough. And energy absorption only gets one energy, so you can't really like power it up very easily. It's not the worst thing you can be running, I guess, but I would be hard pressed to find a deck that wouldn't just want to play either Latios or Latios instead. And they have like very similar energy requirements. Like, if your deck plays fire energy, you can play Latios. If it plays psychic, you can play either of them, and if it plays lightning, you can play Latios. So, yeah, I don't really know why you would want to play this card, but I guess you could in something maybe. And what else do we have here? Um, I would probably put Groudon around here. Groudon similarly is not good, but it is a fighting type attacker. So it is, it's RS to BK. And I would also put probably I put Suicune and Raikou around here. These guys are similar to Entei, like they have a pretty solid burst attack. No real, issue with retreat cost. Their attacks are expensive, but as long as you have the same number of prize or more, then they're pretty solid. I just don't know what deck you would want to play these in. Like Entei, I think has like a deck you can very much play it in, and these two, I mean, I don't know. They're not bad, but I don't know. Well, actually, I mean, they are bad. Like, I wouldn't play these cards in anything. I would probably put them both above Groudon, though. I think, like, their attacks are just better. I mean, Groudon does 80 for 5 with a drawback, and these guys do 70 for 3 with a drawback, but it's not a drawback if you play around it. Their drawbacks are pretty funny if you do have to not play around them, though. Like discarding all energy or doing 40 to everything, including Raikou. I never knew that. I actually thought it didn't hit itself, but it does. That's funny. But I mean, these guys might have a home somewhere. And then I'd probably throw Gyarados on here. Gyarados is bad. Gyarados is just bad. Like, I don't like a lot of people try to build around this card because it has an attack that is funny, and like discards your entire deck to just do a lot of damage. Um, you know what card can one shot things easily though is Lugia EX. There's a deck called LBS that can do this for one less energy, and not only that, but they can do it every turn. And they don't require that much setup. They require a Holland Mentor and they require a Blastoise EX. And that is all you really need to get going. Gyarados needs a bunch of setup to do something funny, and then it's probably going to get KO'd next turn. And if it doesn't, then you need to do setup to get it to KO something else. You cannot just all out blast a bunch of times over and over. And then lastly, just these guys are all pretty terrible. I'm not gonna bother ordering them. But I will talk about them individually. Why not? So Pikachu, Torchic, Trico. Unlike Mudkip, they don't have like a weird niche first attack. I think that none of their attacks are good. And Springback does still have that like advantage if you get into sudden death, where it just does 70 damage. But I mean, like, come on, you're not gonna play a card for that purpose unless you've got some deck that can like always go to sudden death. But uh, come on, Regirock is not have the metal typing that Registeel has, and it is fighting type, but it is awful. It is so bad. Dig Drain just has no like offensive pressure at all. You can use like Metatite to do more like pressure to fighting weak things. Final Blast is 3 energy and it does 30 damage functionally like 99% of the time, which is again just horrible. And it has 3 retreat. There's just like no world where this card sees a place in anything. Regice, similar deal. Ice Barrier is the same as Latios Delta, but Latios Delta has free retreat. It does more damage. It has a better second attack. It um, has like a good Pokebody. It can fit in with Latios Delta. Like there's just no world that you would want to play Regice Delta or Regice Star in something. And then last and probably not least, Regirock's probably the well. Yeah, Regirock is probably the worst. This is probably the worst one on here. But last to talk about is Kyogre Star. Um, Unlike Groudon, it doesn't have a useful typing, and unlike Metagross, it doesn't get back energy that are hard to get back. And its attack is not the worst, Sheer Cold, but like, which is where when are you going to use this? What like you're gonna put 5 energy on this thing and do 60 damage for paralysis? I mean, I just don't really think that's worth it. And the 3 retreat cost kind of kills any. If this had 1 retreat cost, I mean, it would still probably not be any higher, but 3 is just. You need a good reason to play something with 3 retreat cost in RSTBK. And so that's probably going to be my tier list. So Mew Star, um, good in a lot of good decks. Things in A tier are good in at least one meta deck, or good in one meta deck, and then can maybe see fringe use in a bunch of good decks, and maybe can get into meta decks for Umbreon. B tier are cards that I like either see fringe use in off meta decks, or I could see being fringe use in off meta decks like Mudkip. C tier are cards that I don't think see much use anywhere in anything except for Gyarados, but I think it's there because it's funny more than it's good. And then in the case of like these other ones, I don't think I've ever seen them used much, but I could at least see why you maybe would want to play them. And D tier are just terrible cards. There's just no world that I think you'd want to play these in anything. And so that's gonna do it. Hopefully this was a nice, not as super esoteric break from my other stuff. So yeah, if you have any use for these cards, feel free to let me know. You can find a use for these C tier guys, or God forbid these D tier guys. Let me know. And otherwise, that's gonna do it.